Arsenal's dream of clinching the Premier League this season is becoming more and more realistic as City drop points. Again, welcome to the Monday Show. Thanks indeed for being a part of this journey. My name is Kindo. So it was the weekend, just a chaotic weekend, I should say, filled with heartbreaks, setbacks, and all of those things that happens in football. A lot of fans' hearts were broken, but why others were rejoicing and all of that. So quickly, let's begin with Arsenal versus Everton. 2 goals to 0, it ended at Emirates. It was a tight game for Arsenal indeed. Things look all square and look almost impossible for Arsenal to have claimed all 3 points in that encounter until Mikel Arteta introduced a 16-year-old Max Dowman. He turned the tables around and made it his own show. He is a magician. I think you can already see that he's got such potentials. You can be comparing him to the likes of Kylian Mbappe. Perhaps you could say he's the next Kylian Mbappe. Even you could say he's the next Mercy. He looks like he is just the next big deal for Arsenal to come from hell end. He's got pace. He's got confidence on the ball. In fact, Max Dowan is a talent, a real gem Arsenal have got in their hands. He was swapped in the 74th minute and then already made a very crucial pass in the 89th minute that got Arsenal the opener, the bread, got Arsenal the opener in the 89th minute. And then with the chaos and everything that happened. In the 97th minute, saw him running away from his own ends to put the ball behind the net in an empty net where Jordan Pickford was nowhere to be found. It was a chaotic moment. It was a memorable moment for Max Doman as he became the youngest player to score in the Premier League. He was just 16 years, 16 years, 73 days old. He made history, and of course, it was a big, big day for Max Doan. Congratulations to him for being the youngest goal scorer. And yes, I can say that Arsenal have got another gem in their hands coming all the way from hell. And now let's move on from Arsenal game. Well, before we move on to the next game, let's see what it means, that win means for Arsenal. So with 3 points secured against Everton at home, it means they are now 9 points clear of City. They've got 7 games until they become champions, if at all. They keep the pace and they keep, fighting because in the remaining 7 games, if Arsenal manage to get 5 wins and perhaps a draw, if I should say, then they will be crowned champions. But 7 games is indeed a big deal. If they lose 7 points, that they're leading with 9 points. And so if they lose 3 games, it means that all 9 points are gone. So it is still, of course, a big, big deal for them to be crowned champions at the end of the day. So until they keep the fight, they may likely not be champion. But at this moment, I just have faith that Arsenal may just be champion. They've waited for how long now? 22 years for them to be crowned champions. So it is a long time that Arsenal have waited for this moment. So indeed, it does look like it's now finally happening for Arsenal under Mikel Arteta. Now let's talk about Chelsea versus Newcastle United. 1 goal to 0 ended in favor of Newcastle at the bridge. Newcastle only needed Anthony Gordon's goal in the 18th minute to dent Chelsea's chances of staying in the top 5. Chelsea couldn't do more in that game as they failed to secure even a draw against a Newcastle side. Now, pundits and of course Chelsea fans are beginning to question the capacity of Liam Rosenior. People are beginning to ask questions and say perhaps it was a bad idea to let go Maresca in the first place, but the deal has already been done. They can only wait to see what Liam will do for them at the end of the season because with the way Chelsea chances are right now, most likely they may not qualify for Champions League next season. And Rubber fans are beginning to throw shades already saying that Club World Cup winners might be playing in the Europa League next season. But again, there are still 8 games to decide Chelsea's fate. So you can, just say it is all over for Chelsea until the end of the season. Liverpool are not looking decent themselves. They are just a point ahead of Chelsea. So indeed, it's still a big, big deal. And of course, 8 games, it's all it takes for Chelsea to decide their fate and see if whether or not they get to qualify for the Champions League next season. Now let's talk about Manchester City versus West Ham. 1-1 it ended at Etihad. Now, Man City's dream of keeping a strong chase on Arsenal for the title was punctured by a relegation threatening West Ham. Now, City have joined the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea and even Man U. Yeah, Man U struggled against West Ham too. So now they've joined that list of big guys that have struggled against the underdogs. City went ahead in the 31st minute through a Bernardo Silva from an almost impossible angle. That was a very, very good goal, you could tell. You would say from Bernardo Silva, but that's all they could do as West Ham responded almost immediately in the 35th minute to make sure that they get themselves back in the game. And it all went down till 90th minute plus and it ended in a draw. City couldn't do more as they saw the dream of chasing Arsenal strongly for the Premier League slipped away again. So now they are 9 points behind Arsenal. What does that mean for City? When it comes to Pep Guardiola, it is not all over until it is all over. You know what I'm saying? So they have a game in hand. If the game get to win their game in hand, they will cut it down to 7 points. But that game in hand is actually their next game in the Premier League is actually against Chelsea at the Bridge. Chelsea, who needs a win to make sure that they qualify for Champions League, would want to give everything against the City at home. But Pep Guardiola is always Pep Guardiola. When you least expect, in fact, there's nothing that's impossible when it comes to Pep Guardiola and his boys. So let's see if at all he can still revive their hopes for a chase this season, or it is all over for Pep Guardiola, who perhaps have to wait for next season again. Now let's move on from that City game and talk about Manchester United versus Villa. After that loss against Newcastle, Michael Carrick boys came back strong, with a statement win against Aston Villa. 3-1 it ended. This further cements their place in the top 4. They are now third on the table with 54 points, 4 clear of Aston Villa, who were once 10 points ahead of Manchester United before Michael Carrick was appointed. Now you can see the irony. Manchester United went all the way since the appointment of Michael Carrick. They've only lost 1 game, which was against Newcastle United. So with that, they have gone ahead of Aston Villa, who are now 3 points behind Manchester United. It does look like United have secured their place in the top 5 finish already for the Champions League next season. And for Aston Villa, things are now looking more and more unrealistic for them to, if at all, at the end of the day, they can maintain their place in that top 5 finish. They were third on the table comfortably. As I mentioned, they were 10 points ahead of Manchester United before the appointment of Michael Carrick. But now, just somehow, United have managed to go on ahead of them, and they are now topping Aston Villa with 3 massive points, with 8 games left to be played. So in those 8 games, if United keep their faith strong, perhaps they could just finish in the 3rd position. And for Aston Villa, well, it depends on what Chelsea and Liverpool do. I don't think Aston Villa have their place cemented yet in the top 5 finish because they have been struggling a lot in recent games. So 8 games for Villa to decide their fate. If at all, they'll get to play in the Champions League next season. Now, talking about that United game, Bruno Fernandes was again very, very influential in that game. Now you see the reason why he is the king of that Manchester United revival team under Michael Carrick. He looked very decent, provided 2 assists in that game to make sure that his side ran away with all 3 points against Aston Villa to cement their place, of course, in the top five this season. And let's move on, talk about Liverpool versus Spurs. Liverpool were almost running away with all 3 points at home until Richarlison fired home in the 90th minute to make sure that the hearts of the Reds fans were broken. And of course, they stole a point away from Liverpool, who also needed all 3 points to make sure that they stay in that top five gathered momentum. But with that draw, it means that this team, their lead were cut down to just 1 point ahead of Chelsea. So things are looking uncertain until the last day. It is still very, very open in that top five, especially for Villa, Liverpool, and Chelsea. Anybody can overthrow anyone. So until the remaining 8 games are played, we cannot decide if at all Liverpool are going to secure a Champions League next season, because they are not looking stable themselves. In their last 3 games or so, they've not been able to score more than just a goal, even though Dominic Sobasla was very influential again in that game, scoring a very precise free kick. That's free kick number 3. Yeah. He scored against City, he scored against Arsenal, and then exactly from that position again, he did it yesterday against a sports side. But that wasn't enough for his side to secure all 3 points, as Richarlison made sure that he broke the hearts of Liverpool fans and still at least a point to end their 6 game losses back to back by now. Before that game, Spurs were on a 6 game losing streak, but Richarlison made sure that the faith does not maintain. That faith is not. They don't continue on that faith, as he stole a point away from Anfield to make sure that Tottenham Hotspur gets a point to push them further away from the relegation zone. They are now in the 16th position, which is still not set yet for Tottenham. If they can continue from there and perhaps get a win in the next game, then they could be safe. But if not, it's still not a done deal for Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah, they could still be relegated. How funny it would be for a Tottenham side to be relegated this season. And that's all from the games that were played over the weekend. But before I close in on the show, let's quickly take a look at the results from other games in the Premier League. So across board, Burnley and Bournemouth played out a goalless draw. Then Brighton, I think the third team not to have gone away and get a win against Sunderland in their home ground. So Brighton won Sunderland 1-0. And then Crystal Palace and Leeds also played out a goalless draw. Fulham versus Nottingham Forest also played out a goalless draw, as Liverpool and Tottenham played out a 1-1 draw. And that's about the side of the show today. Thanks indeed for always keeping in touch with us. Don't forget to subscribe, share our content, follow us on social media, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate your engagement thus far, and I'm looking forward to more of your engagement. Thank you, and see you on the next episode. Bye.